Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening. It's always a good time. Welcome into Touchdown in Paradise here on the Finstock Sports Network. I'm Justin.
Russ.
I'm Joe.
I'm Pete.
This weekend, boys, we saw a heavyweight fight in an SEC state. And no, I'm not talking about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I'm talking about Georgia versus Tennessee happening down in Athens. Georgia bounces back after that loss to Ole Miss with a big win over the Vols. Carson Beck bouncing back himself in a big way. 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. On the Vols side, Nico, 167 yards, nothing else. Dylan Sampson did have 101 rushing and a touchdown. But they also didn't score in the second half. We're going to get into the scenarios today of what the playoff looks like with only 2 weeks left of the season. But before we get into the SEC, what went wrong for Tennessee here, Pete?
I mean, you just said it. You don't score any points in the second half. The Georgia defense stepped up. I mean, they shut them down, man. You can't beat any SEC school in general, especially Georgia, how good they are, if you don't score points. They just couldn't get it done, man. Really, to me, it was more about Georgia's defense than it was Tennessee necessarily failing. I think Georgia's a better team, and I think that their defense stepped up. Now, the Georgia offense didn't really ball out that crazy, but their defense did enough to get the job done, man. So, yeah, to me, it was all about the defense. Hats off to Georgia. Great win. And, obviously we're going to talk about scenarios, and we all saw what the committee was putting tonight with how many SEC teams with 2 losses in. But, yeah, they really needed that one, man. Georgia could not have lost that game, and they really came through.
Joe, Carson Beck was averaging, 3 interceptions a game the last month, pretty much. What flipped the switch for him this past week?
Well, I just think it's what he wanted to be this entire season. I mean, He returned to win the SEC, win the Heisman, win a national championship, which he wasn't able to do last year. So I think ultimately this was the Carson Beck that everyone, all the pundits, Georgia, SEC thought he would be. He just, as sports goes, you return. I remember, Matt Leinart returned, took ballroom dancing, and then loses in the national championship. So, and he didn't win the Heisman again. So, that's just football. That's just football. I think, it's good for Georgia. It's good for Georgia that, he's figured out the turnovers, but, it's one game. Playing at Georgia. Georgia always seems to play better at home. And again, like what Pete said, if you don't score in the second half, it takes a lot of pressure off the opponent's quarterback. So good for Beck. We'll see how he plays with the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and also, they had a 12-play drive that they didn't get any points on. Like, you can't have drives like that, man. You got to score at least a field goal.
Yeah, not only does it eat time, but to go away with nothing it's a backbreaker.
Yeah. Nobody can emulate what Army did last week against, North Texas, taking up almost the entire quarter, but they did cash in on one single drive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can get 7 points, a 13-minute drive is great because it eliminates the offense from the opponent's team to be on the field. But if you don't score, it's pointless.
That's right. Russ, now I'm going to turn to you. Comments on the game, and then give us the scenarios in the SEC.
Comments on the game. I didn't know Tennessee and North Texas were in the same range.
When did I compare? I just said not everyone could be Army.
I'm learning something new every day, Justin. Wow.
2 powerhouses.
You're a special kind of person to link what I said and compare.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I agree with what both Joe and Pete said. You got to score points, and it's kind of been an issue for Tennessee. What that offense has been pretty anemic. Nico hasn't really thrown much. I think he's thrown less than 200 yards every single game. So, I mean, you can't really win when you go on the road and you're trying to play in between the hedges there is tough. And, they showed up. That defense is obviously is the strength of Georgia and will always be the strength of Georgia with Kirby Smart, and just makes everything more interesting. You got to love it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nico did the same thing against Bama. I mean, he gets with the 20-yard line. They don't come away with points. A bad pick. Like, come on.
Their rushing attack for is very good, but you're kind of leaning on a first-year quarterback trying to win in a hostile environment.
Yeah.
You got to get it done, and that's a tough place to win.
Yeah, man. All right, so tell us what's going down in the SEC, Russ.
Oh, boys, this is just prime time, just like football. Like, I've been percolating since Sunday. I came up with this, and it's just been like the gears have been going. So, I mean, I'm going to throw some questions out because I want to hear all your guys' opinions. But we all saw the playoffs. What SEC's getting 4 teams. We got Texas right now, who's the 3, if I'm incorrect, if I'm not mistaken. They're in line right now. Maybe
they're the 2.
They're 2?
Yeah.
2. Okay. In line to make the SEC title game. Still got a game against A&M at the end of the year. Who's in line to could be there too. But they had a bad loss to UGA. We got UGA, who's got a top 6 strength of schedule. But they lost to Ole Miss 28-10. They lost to Bama 41-34. They did beat Tennessee this week and Clemson. Then we got Bama, who beat Georgia 41-34, killed LSU. Now, is LSU that good? Probably not. It's not looking as good. Lose to Vandy's not looking good. Then you beat Tennessee, top 7 strength of schedule. You got Ole Miss, who beat Georgia 28-10, but then lost to LSU in overtime 29-26, lost to Kentucky 2017. Top 30 strength schedule. A&M, in my opinion, if I'm wrong, I think A&M, I think they lose to Texas. But my question is, we're gonna kick it off with Justin. How many teams do you think the SEC gets in, regardless of the losses?
I'm gonna go with the lower side 3. I think Texas, Alabama, and Georgia will for sure make it in. Ole Miss could absolutely get in, but it's really going to depend on, can the Big 12 maybe sneak back in with another team? It's not looking good right now. Or could SMU go in and steal a spot if Miami wins it and SMU is sitting there? Or say if SMU upsets Miami. We're getting into the ACC here, but it just seems like there's so many good teams out there. How are you going to justify more than 3 teams of the SEC going to get in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to get 4, but I mean, I think they have a case, in my opinion, to get 4 teams. It's the best conference in football. It's been the best conference in football for forever. How do you make a case for Alabama when you beat Georgia, you beat Tennessee, or no, they lost to Tennessee, right? Yeah. You beat Georgia, though, pretty handily, but then you lose to Vanderbilt. How do you make that case for them to get into the playoffs?
That's a great question because, again, that's the blemish on their record is, the Tennessee loss is forgivable, and it was close. It was a 7-point game. No, it wasn't even it was a 7-point game.
7-point game, yeah.
That Vanderbilt game is a blemish, and the fact that your best win is LSU, Georgia too, my bad. But then LSU, Missouri, and then you close out
both
the season.
Now unranked.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's not looking as good now. LSU,
no, that's true. And I mean, and you close out with Auburn, which isn't looking as competitive. I think ultimately the key argument is simply you went into Death Valley and beat them pretty handily. You beat Missouri. You shut out Missouri. And then again, you beat Georgia at home, which was a great game early in the year. That Georgia game is the game they hang their hat on. They kind of hope, I think, Georgia wins out, and probably both be in the in the playoff. But I think ultimately Alabama just puts their hat on that Georgia win and hopes maybe Missouri win or LSU win starts to look better. But again, that LSU win is not looking as impressive because they're 6-4 now. But that Georgia win is the one they put their hat on.
I mean, that was a great segment there, Joe. I kind of agree with you, and I think you could make this argument for every 2-loss team.
Yeah,
the SEC that they and that's always been everybody's like, why does the SEC get so much? I'm like, they just they play. It's the best conference. They beat the shit out of each other. Excuse my language. We're a family-friendly podcast here. It slips up every once in a while. Pete, I'm going to give you – what is the argument for Ole Miss? Say Georgia does get in the playoff. They get in the 12, and then you have Ole Miss. What is their argument when they beat Georgia pretty convincingly 28-10?
Yeah, I mean, besides that loss to LSU, which looks worse and worse as the weeks go on, and then the loss to Kentucky, who's unranked, I think really – the only thing I'm really looking at Ole Miss, I mean, the last 2 games against Florida, who they should beat the crap out of, Mississippi State, they should beat the crap out of. I'm trying to figure out here, in general, not just Ole Miss, but I'm looking at the SEC like whatever 2 teams make the title game, they're in, and then I would take the 3rd best team in the SEC and put them in. And then that's how I would look at the SEC. I would take 3 teams, maybe give the Big 12 one more. I wouldn't be opposed if the SEC got 4 teams in, but that's how I'm looking at them right now. It's like whoever's in the title game, put those 2 teams in. Whoever wins obviously has the higher seed. Whoever lost made the title game, 2nd seed in terms of SEC seeding, and then take the 3rd best team in the SEC or whoever finished just outside there and put them in. That's how I'm looking at it. But those 2 losses by Ole Miss are terrible. Like LSU sucks and Kentucky sucks. And besides Bama losing to Vanderbilt, none of those other teams, Georgia, even Tennessee, they don't really have a loss like kind of goes bad, I don't think. So to me, it's going to be harder for them if they don't win the SEC title game or however that goes. It's going to be harder for them. I could see them on the outside looking in where it's Alabama or it's Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, those top 3. That's how I'm looking at it.
Now, this is going to be all you guys, one at a time, just a yes-no blank question. If we have a 2-loss team in the title game, which we'll probably get in the SEC, is the loser who would have 3 losses, would they get in the top 12? Justin, yes or no?
No.
Joe?
No.
Pete?
Yes.
And then my last final question, would South Carolina be in the top 12 if they beat LSU? Justin?
Yes.
Joe?
No.
Pete?
My answer is no, but it'd be great if they were. I'm rooting for it.
I mean, it's not. They're going to have 3 losses. It's not going to happen. But, I mean, talk about
possibly a 3-loss. We just said a 3-loss team in it, possibly. So who knows?
They're not going to make the SEC title game.
That's true. Yeah.
Losing so many games, 7 points and less. It's a you got to think about it. It's like they're probably the best 3-loss team out there right now.
Hey, they would scare me next year if they can.
And they got a freshman quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They'd be scary next year, man.
Mm-hmm. It'd be nice to see some new blood in the SEC coming through there. Thank you, Russ, for the SEC scenario. Moving on here to the Big 12. Sing it with me, guys. Boom, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust. Boom, 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 boom. BYU bites the dust. Yes, BYU was dusted by Kansas at home, ending their undefeated season bid. We had Jalen Daniel, not Jaden, Jalen. Jaden is in Washington now, killing in the NFL. Jalen Daniels had 169 yards, 1 interception. Devin Neal, only 52 yards rushing, but he had 2 touchdowns. Jake Retzlaff on the other side, 192 yards, a touchdown and a pick. BYU's clearly got an offense problem. They lost their bit at a perfect season. They're not out of it for the playoff. We saw it tonight in the rankings. They're in 12th. But what I don't get, guys, and give me some context on here, they're one spot behind SMU, who they beat at SMU. Is that fair at all, Joe?
I mean, it's not fair, but I mean, that's just the way it is. You lose at the wrong time. People that have been playing well later in the season are going to jump you. I mean, it's kind of the question, that we're talking about with the SEC. I mean, they've kind of beaten each other, and some of them have been beating each other pretty soundly, that it's like, okay, how can you put so-and-so, how can you put Georgia over Bama, who Bama beat, but then, Alabama loses to Vanderbilt? It's definitely not an easy question, nor, I mean, if you look at it, is it fair? But it really comes down, in my opinion, to just when you lose that game or when you won that game. Because if I'm Justin, I could be wrong, think they won that earlier in the year when BYU when the ball was rolling. Now they lose and, they're still in the running, but who's been more impressive lately? I would say SMU's been more impressive lately. And I would want to see, based off of the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, I'd want to see SMU over BYU because they're the hotter team.
So recency bias definitely plays in here.
Talk about a team who's getting, like, everybody's saying, Indiana's getting no respect. Talk about a team who's getting no respect is SMU. I've been saying it for weeks. They're getting no respect. They're the top team in the ACC. They can't even get in the top 12.
Right. The benefit of the doubt is the brand that Miami has built ever since SMU got the death penalty in the 80s. Because the Canes have won 5 national championships since that happened, I'm pretty sure.
The only thing I would say is I just looked it up, and BYU actually technically has a better strength of schedule than SMU. So I think there's maybe an argument there. But it was such a close game, week 2. Yeah, it's probably why. But we'll see. I mean, right now BYU's in it and SMU's not. So I guess it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm looking at it as, both teams have one loss. Yeah, the Kansas loss was not a good loss, really bad blemish. They're a 4-win team, but they've been playing very hot recently. It's just that they have the head-to-head win. Usually in the NFL that would happen, where the team that beat you, at least later in the year, would be ahead of you. But this is college football. That's why we love college football. So now with the Big 12 scenarios here, I'll take the lead. We've got 3 teams really in contention to make it to the Big 12 title game. BYU, obviously. Their next game is at Arizona State. Massive, massive matchup that I'll definitely be watching. It's in Tempe. And then they have Houston, who's been playing better a lot lately. Then you've got Colorado, who's been playing red hot the last month and a half, pretty much. They get Kansas this week. Big bad Kansas. Can they be the ones to slay these Dragon Slayers? Then they get Oklahoma State, who unbelievably still has not won a conference game this year, a year after appearing in the Big 12 title game. Then you've got Arizona State. Talk about a turnaround season for Kenny Dillingham. They barely won any games the last couple of years, and now they're 8-2 moving into the new conference. Big, big praise for them. They went to Kansas State and won, knocked them out of the rankings this week. But, of course, they've got BYU this week, and then they've got the rivalry game with Russ's Arizona Wildcats to end the year. Then you've got an outside chance of Iowa State, who's 8-2 right now, still has to face Utah, who's pretty lifeless right now, and then Kansas State, who might just be pushing for a better bowl game at that point of the season. So with all this, the question is, who gets in? I'm going to start with Pete. Who gets into the Big 12 title game?
Oh, man. I think BYU is in, obviously. Oh, geez. It's such a crazy – here, let me look it up here. I didn't think you were going to start with me. I think, obviously, BYU, and I'm thinking it's probably going to be Colorado. I mean, right now they're 8-2 with 6-1 in conference. I think they're going to win out, and so is BYU. So I think it's going to be those two. And then I think whoever wins is probably going to be the one team going to the top 12. Unless something changes elsewhere. I think they're only going to get one team in. It'd be nice if they got 2, but I think they're just going to get one. And I think it's going to be Colorado.
Russ, it seems like Colorado's been the talk of everything the last month and a half or so because they've won so much. And it just seems like this is their year to cruise through and win it. Do you see this happening? And if not, who do you see coming out of the Big 12?
I'm never going to say Arizona State. That's just my personal bias. It's not going to happen with me. I see this week a nice bounce back from BYU to get that W against Arizona State. So BYU, Colorado, I got to check. Colorado's got Kansas, which should be a W, and Oklahoma State.
It's going to be a tougher team than they.
It's tough for Kansas, but I mean, on the road, and then you got Oklahoma State, who hasn't won a conference game and is 3-7. So they definitely have the easier path. I think BYU will have a nice bounce back game tonight, but we'll get a lot better picture on Sunday morning when everybody wakes up. But I'm going BYU Colorado on that front. I won't, Kenny Dillingham done a phenomenal job after getting that big suspension last year, but I think Arizona, it's been a down year, but the only game that matters is that game at the end of the year. So take Arizona State down. It's a winning season.
There you go. Joe, take your pick. Who comes out of the Big 12, and do they get a second team in?
I think, honestly, it's Colorado. I think the narrative is with Colorado. I think they have a Heisman Trophy winner. I think college football kind of wants Colorado with Prime and, Hunter. It just everything points to Colorado. I think I have Arizona I have Arizona State beating BYU. I think BYU kind of already peaked, and they're kind of coming back down to earth. They're still a great team, but they definitely have some flaws. Do they get a second team in? I don't think they do. I think if the only way I see it is potentially if Colorado wins out, Arizona State beats BYU, and then I would assume would be Colorado, Arizona State in the playoff or in the conference championship, and then ultimately I'd say it's a toss up between whoever wins that. If Arizona State wins, could you see them maybe at the 12 spot or 11? Put Colorado in, yes, but there's a lot of moving pieces that can happen, and as we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks now, the Big 12 is just beating each other up. It seems like everyone can beat everyone, so I wouldn't be surprised if next week we're talking about, well, we were all wrong because so and so won, so and so lost. But I would say Colorado is the easy pick. And I would probably, if I was a betting man today, I would say only Colorado is going to be in it for the Big 12.
I mean, what I'm saying, guys, we should all be Cougar fans. What you got to do this weekend, you got to go on Friday night, go to the bullpen, get yourself a nice marg from Leslie, and get yourself a Cougar. Let's go Cougars.
Hell yeah.
I like where your head's at, Russell.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll get a milk, and I'll just down that thing. Oh, this is all good. Now I just want a one-word yes or no answer from all of you going down the line. Say the Big 12 gets one team in. Do they win a game in the college football playoff? Russ?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
Pete?
I'm going to say yes because I think it's going to shake out a little different here. So I think they're going to get maybe a favorable matchup. Yes.
All right, that's interesting. Well, thank you for that, guys. Next up, we're going to move down to the ACC, where Pitt lost a heartbreaker at home, which is my upset of the week. Thanks a lot, Pitt. You almost had me hit my cover and my upset at the same time. Whatever. 24-20 to Clemson. The backup quarterback, Nate Yarnell, 350 yards, a touchdown, and a pick on the very last play of the game. Kate Klubnik, 288 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 50 yards and the score with 1:16 left. Pitt had 13 penalties for 100 yards compared to Clemson's 6 for 57. So this game obviously was the dagger to any hope that Pitt had to make the ACC title game. Clemson is still there. Miami's still in the driver's seat along with SMU. So now I'm going to throw it to Pete. to give us the ACC lowdown.
Okay, so the lowdown here for the ACC is we basically got three teams, SMU, Miami, and Clemson. The odds right now we're looking at to make the game, Clemson has a 24% chance, Miami's 33% chance, or this I think this to win the whole thing, SMU 41% chance. Basically, how it's going to shake out the last 2 weeks of the season, SMU has 2 conference games. They win those, they're in. And then let me see here. Miami also has 2 conference games. They are playing. So the last 2 games on Miami's schedule, where they could end up 7-1, which would tie Clemson's conference record right now because Clemson doesn't have any more conference games. Miami's playing Wake Forest and Syracuse. So ideally, and this is what I want because I don't like Clemson, is ideally Miami, SMU wins this coming week. They're a lock to be in it. Miami wins out. And they are almost a lock. They would basically go to like a kind of a head-to-head and look at their wins and losses with Clemson. Right now, the slight edge would go to Miami because on head-to-head opponents that they played, they have one better win, where Clemson has a loss. So that's ideal. Where we really get screwed up is if SMU loses this coming week. Ideally, they don't lose either of the two, but if they lose this week, it gets screwed up. And if Miami loses it all, it gets screwed up. With Clemson having 2 non-conference games to finish out, they don't really factor into obviously the conference. But it'd be ideal if they lost, and it would have been nice if they lost to Pittsburgh, but they didn't, of course. Outside of that, just looking at the top 12 here, I don't know why, but I feel like if SMU and Miami go to the conference game and say SMU wins, I kind of want to have SMU and Miami both in it. So that's why maybe I'm kind of rooting for one less SEC team maybe. I don't know. But what do you guys think? Do you think that the ACC has a legit chance to get 2 in if one of those 2 is not Clemson? Thinking back how Clemson lost to Georgia and got destroyed. So if it's SMU and Miami, do you think they have any shot? I guess start with Justin. Any shot to get those 2 in, or is it pretty much just a one and whoever wins the championship's getting in?
It's really tough to say because if you have a 2-loss ACC team who lost the title game versus a 2-loss SEC team,
or possibly a 3-loss.
Yeah, 2 or 3 loss, who knows? The committee always favors the SEC, and we've seen that ever since the inception of this thing. So I'm going to say no for now, that they're only going to get 1 team in this year. That isn't to say that they could continue to get stronger and then next year get a couple in. But here's one thing that I might add on is if Miami loses close to SMU wins out from here, then I feel like they'll try and sneak Miami in a lower seed. But if Miami wins and SMU is who they play and they lose, I think it's just Miami.
Yeah, I'm with you. The problem that I see, I want two teams from the ACC to get in, but the problem is with their strength of schedules in the 60s compared to most other SEC teams in the top 25. I think it's just going to be hard to put a second one in, no matter how far or how good of a championship it is. Russ, what are your thoughts, man? Do you think that if this plays out, what do you think?
Well, if it plays out the way we think it is with Miami, SMU, I'm with Justin. If Miami wins, it's a one-and-done conference. If SMU does win, I think Miami will maybe sneak away, steal one.
Yeah.
One of those spots. I'm not going to say I don't know why we're comparing the SEC and the SEC right now at this time and place, because there's no comparison, because you look at the strength of schedule of the SEC, it's insane. It's more like, ACC Big 12 right now. But sure. I think if SMU wins, they get Miami in, just because Miami is such a big conglomerate of college football. They bring in so much money. It's a blue blood. It's Miami. But I think it's a one and done conference this year. I think Miami gets in just because of you're going to have Cam Ward.
Yeah.
It's a highlight. It's exciting football. That's what they want. But with the strength of schedule in the ACC, only way they get to, I would see some way, would be SMU winning.
Yeah, if you look at the strength of schedule, if it was pretty much any other team in the ACC, like even Louisville's got a top 20 strength of schedule, or top 22. I mean, some of these other ACC teams have a lot better strength of schedules I mean, that might be why these two teams, SMU and Miami, are still playing so good. They're not playing the same caliber competition. So,
hey, Pete and everybody, I got a question. Do you think this will become an issue with the 12-team playoff? That we've seen Miami didn't really have that great of a non-conference. ACC's not great. Do you think teams will start just saying, screw the non-conference game, I'm going to start scheduling cupcakes because they see all that matters is what I do in my conference anyways? Do you think start becoming a problem?
I could see that. I mean, if you're going to basically automatically put the conference winner and possibly the runner-up in, why would you waste your time going to play some SEC school in West Texas or something? Like, if it doesn't serve you any purpose, why do it? And I think that's actually a good point, Russ. And that's maybe why they're going to put the SEC teams in, give them 4, is basically to say, hey, all you other fuckers, sorry, kid show, all you other sandbaggers that are going to win your conference, but your strength of schedule sucks. We're not going to rank you, and we're not going to put 2 teams in. So Big 12, you're getting 1. ACC, you're getting 1. SEC's getting 4. So maybe that's the statement they're going to. We'll see. I mean, to be honest,
you kind of see it in the way that they've put out the rankings the last 2 weeks is, even though SMU is right now on top, they're still putting them outside the playoff.
Yeah,
and putting Miami there, which I mean.
Yeah, and I guess that goes to show also, like, the SEC teams aren't playing that crazy in non-conference schedules. They're just they're looked at, and obviously they have the top teams. But like, what if we have a year where the SEC kind of sucks, and they don't have any other non-conference wins or big non-conference stuff, and they don't get as many teams in or something? I don't know. I doubt that would ever happen, but I could see that, Russ. I mean, if you got one shot. And you're like, I don't want to waste my time playing Notre Dame at Notre Dame or going out to play BYU at BYU. I might as well schedule someone in the ACC that sucks, and maybe that's your only shot.
I think the other thing we have to take into consideration as well with the whole strength of schedule conversation is also what conference we are talking about, because I think SEC, they have I don't want to say the right, but they have the excuse to schedule like the Citadel or, Little Sisters of the Poor, because their strength of schedule is within their conference, where conferences like the Big 12, the ACC, you could even potentially argue a little bit that the Big 10, they need to strengthen their strength of schedule outside of the conference, because ultimately the top 3-4 teams are really the most competitive, and you're not always playing them consistently. So to give yourself that bump, you have to go play. I mean, I give Texas A&M credit. You played Notre Dame at Texas A&M. That's, if you win that game, that looks really good for Texas A&M. If you're I'm trying to think of some other games, but again, if you're like a Michigan and you go and play Texas Tech, is that really that impressive of a game?
Georgia beating Clemson. I mean, no, it was a neutral site game, but Clemson's top 25 team right off the bat.
Exactly. So, I mean, it really depends on who it is as well, is how well do you do it? I think the big one, and maybe this is just me, is how well these teams are playing. Are they winning just by a point to, Little Sisters of the Poor and struggling? Or are they blowing people out, by 20 points? I think that's where, being a homer of Notre Dame, every team that they play at this point are nobodies, and they have to blow them out. And I think that's the same thing for teams like, SMU, who is undefeated, but they still need to win impressively, because even if they lose one game, as you're all saying, and I agree with, they're not making it to the championship unless they win it, because I think they'll put Miami there. I think they'll put Clemson there, because ultimately it's a business, and more people are going to want to watch Miami or Clemson over SMU. It's just the fact.
I mean, they're unless they lose, they're going to make the title game. It's just would they make the top 12? Would they make the college football playoff if they lost? And I mean, I think kind of all in agreement they basically have to win.
Yeah, I think they got to win out. I think that's going to be one ACC team. I'd like to see two, but then at the same time, do we really want to? Because if it's not going to be as good a game, it's like we want to have the best teams in there. And that's what they said on the show tonight, too. They were asking the one guy, I can't remember his name, I just turned it on, but he said that they're looking at how these teams are playing, not just literally what their ranking is. It's like, how are they actually playing? Are they actually good? Like, do they deserve a spot in? Which is subjective as shit, but you watch enough football, you can pretty much tell who deserves to be in and who doesn't, right?
We kind of saw that last year where it's like, yes, Florida State was 13-0.
Yeah.
And then won the ACC, but was that going to – if we put Florida State in the top 4, is that going to put the best product on the field?
So that's a good question, Russ. I'm not trying to belabor this, but you just asked if teams were going to try to schedule cupcakes in their own conference. Last year, Florida State didn't get in. And that was based on the eye test and who they played. So, like, would that actually help you? Or could you have a team that comes in second in your conference that had, like, a top 10 strength of schedule, and even if maybe they don't win the title, they got one loss in the title game, would they get in over the team that just beat them because they played better the whole – I don't know, I guess you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, but who knows? But that's what I got. So
you better hope your conference is good.
Yeah.
Your conference is strong. It's basically the SEC is strong. Even the Big Ten, even though it looks strong, is we'll get more into the Big Ten in a little bit. But SEC is,
and that is right now actually, because Oregon struggled mightily this week at Wisconsin. They escaped Camp Randall with a 16-13 win. Dillon Gabriel had 218 yards and a pick. Jordan James 121 yards and a touchdown. Braden Locke, 96 yards and a touchdown for Wisconsin. Oregon did clinch a spot in the Big Ten title game today after a full comprehensive review. And I'm going to throw it to Joe here to talk about the Big Ten scenarios.
Yeah, so the Big Ten is kind of interesting. On paper, it looks pretty straightforward. Obviously, on one side, you have Oregon, who has already clinched a berth, and then you have the three big cats that are still there. You have Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State. Now, we'll find out after this week some of the details potentially, because Indiana plays Ohio State this week, and that could shake things up, or that could simplify things for us. My first question, just quickly to all of you, and I'll just go down the line. Who do you want to see play Oregon in the championship without knowing what's happening? Ohio State, Indiana, or Penn State? Pete, I'll start with you. Who do you want to see in that game?
I'd like to see Indiana. I think they're the best story, one of the best stories in college football this year. I really like the coach. I'm not impressed with Penn State and hate Ohio State. So Indiana.
Russ?
Well, I like the story of Indiana. It's unbelievable, and Curt Cinetti's done a phenomenal job, and congratulations for him of getting that 8-year contract, which is huge for Indiana. You're not really thinking Indiana as a football school, but I don't think. I want to see Ohio State. I think that's going to be the best game. We saw that at Austin Stadium in Oregon earlier. That's going to be the best game. Indiana, I think, kind of goes back to what we were talking about the ACC. Their strength of schedule is not strong. I think even if they lose to Ohio State, they lose one more game, I think they're going to be the first team out with one loss because of their strength of schedule. So to answer your question, I want Ohio State, Oregon. I don't think Penn State deserves to be in the playoff. Give me 4
Correct.
Give me a 4 team from the SEC. Give me a UGA who's got 2 losses. Bama's got 2 losses. Ole Miss has 2 losses. I take Texas A&M with 2 losses over Penn State. I don't think they've done anything, and that's the same thing. The strength of schedule is not there, and the one team that they played who was good, they couldn't get it done. They didn't score a touchdown. So I want Ohio State, Oregon.
And Justin, who are you wanting to see in against Oregon?
Congratulations to Curt Cinetti for basically locking up Coach of the Year, like I've been saying for a long portion of this year. Not the entire year, but a long portion of it. At the beginning of the year, I also said that Oregon and Ohio State could potentially play 3 times, once in the regular season, once in the Big Ten title, and then once again in the playoff, potentially the national championship. And I feel like that's going to happen, but I'd much rather see some new blood in the Big Ten, Indiana, get there and give Oregon a good battle and a good game. Of course, Ohio State would give them that, but to see a different helmet out there would be kind of cool.
No, I mean, it's very true. Here's kind of the rundown of how it works. Ohio State basically has control. If they win out, they beat Indiana, they beat Michigan, which again is never an easy game for a Ryan Day Ohio State team. They play Oregon. I think that's kind of what everyone's thinking is going to happen. They want the rematch because, again, Ohio State only lost by 1 in that game in Oregon, in Eugene. Pretty straightforward for them. And then Indiana is the same way. If they win out, they beat Ohio State. There's their strength of record right there, beating Ohio State. And then they finish at Purdue, who's 0-7, probably will be 0-8. The interesting one is Penn State. And Russ, I'm with you. I don't even think Penn State should even be considered right now because ultimately their strength of schedule isn't great. Their best wins are against Illinois, who, yes, was rated at the time, but is not doing great now, UCLA, and SC. So again, and their best and their remaining schedule is Minnesota, who's 4-3, and Maryland 1-6. So I think I'm going to skip Russ because Russ, you kind of answered this question already. To Pete and Justin, do you think if let's just say Indiana beats Ohio State or Ohio State beats Indiana and then loses to Michigan, should Penn State be in the conversation of being in? Yes, they'll be in the championship game, but should they be in the conversation of being in the playoff at all based off of their strength of schedule? I'll start with Justin this time.
If you're not going to put Indiana there with strength of schedule, then why would you put Penn State there? The answer is brand bias, and the committee is going to include Penn State automatically just because of that. So I'm going to say yes, they will, but I don't think they deserve it.
Yeah, damn it. If they win out, they'll be 11-1. Man. It's going to be hard to keep them out. I don't want it. I really don't want it because I think whoever they play in the title game, and God forbid they get into the actual tournament, I think they're going to get rocked. So I don't want it, but I could see them being in because they also do have a pretty massive fan base. Delusional, but massive fan base.
I think, in my opinion,
yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Might be the reason to schedule if Penn State does get in, which is looking like Penn State will get in. As much as I'd prefer to see another SEC. It looks like they're going to get in. They'll give them that. Is to schedule a weaker, strength of schedule. Because I mean, hey, if they go in 11-1, don't make the title game, they're getting in. As much as we don't like it, they're getting in.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. And it definitely what Justin said. It's Penn State. That's Penn State. It's college football.
Yeah.
When you think college football, one of the names you think is Penn State. You think Joe Pa. So, I mean, they're getting in.
Although I don't know if we want to think of Joe Pa that much anymore.
hey, he's not the, whatever his other guy's name was.
Sandusky.
Yeah.
But it's Penn State. I mean, they're getting, if they go 11-1, they get in. Or Indiana, as amazing the season is, doesn't have that brand name.
No, I mean, that's very true. I mean, basically, in my opinion, it seems like if Indiana wants to make the playoff, they need to win out. Because I do believe if they win out and lose to Oregon, they'll probably make it in. But if they don't, if they lose to Ohio State, I think I think their Cinderella story ends there unless some crazy stuff happens like Penn State losing to like Minnesota or Maryland. But we'll see. I think that this weekend is going to be a telling tale. Because as we said, Ohio State or Indiana is going to win. And either we know that they're going to essentially Ohio State, Oregon rematch, or Indiana has a chance at doing something special. But again, I'm going to finish with this. In 2 weeks, you have Ohio State, Michigan. And I know Michigan is not the team they've been, but for some reason, Ryan Day struggles to play Michigan. And you cannot overlook potentially an upset there. Not saying there's going to be, but it's going to be a tough matchup regardless.
Is it in the Big House this year, Joe, or is it in Ann Arbor?
I want to. I'll just double check
right now. I want to say
I want to say
it's at Columbus.
Oh, it's in Columbus.
Did I say big house in Ann Arbor? I meant Columbus. My bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
Columbus.
don't ever confuse those two. You'll get beaten up on one of those campuses.
But he might, Ryan Day might be happy Jim Harbaugh's dominating the NFL, so he's gone.
Oh, I'm sure Ryan Day is happy that basically half of that team's gone now. So, yeah, Ryan Day has to win that game, even if he was undefeated. You can't lose to Michigan 4 years in a row. So,
also, one point on Michigan. They have the number one strength of schedule in the country, which is pretty crazy for a team that just won the title. So regardless of what happens to them this year, hats off to them for having a hard schedule.
But I think going back to that discussion that we were just having, is it better to have a tough strength of schedule or a weak strength of schedule now? And honestly, the more we talk about it, I say if you're in a conference, weak schedule.
Yeah.
Russ, do you have to pee or something? You're going like this.
No, I was like, it's up and down. It's, like you said, it's about the conference.
Yeah.
What
all right.
Beat the Fockers.
We're going to move on from here. Great job, Joe, and great job to all of you for breaking down the conference scenarios. Just to go over a few notable things that happened this weekend. Texas down to Arkansas in the old Southwest Conference rivalry game. Play Sandstorm. Here come the Cocks. South Carolina wins a thrower over Mizzou 34-30. Notre Dame steamrolls UVA at home 35-14. We've got a big game this week we'll talk about in just a minute. Tulane shuts out Navy 35-0. Tulane clinches the AAC title game berth against Army. Genty racks up another 158 yards and 3 touchdowns in Boise State's win over San Jose State. And Washington State, you blew it! You blew a 2-score lead twice. Lost at New Mexico, 38-35, giving them their first ranked win since 2003. You were right in the thick of things to get to the playoff. What happened?
Crazy.
It's positive.
Stupid.
All right. Now time for parlay. Started with that game we just mentioned, Army versus Notre Dame, a game at Yankee Stadium. Notre Dame, a 14-point favorite up in New York, 44.5 over-under. The Irish are a minus 600 money line favorite, while Army plus 440 underdog, starting with Russ.
I've been back and forth, but I think Notre Dame needs to cover the spread here and at least beat them by 15 to make that better case because they don't have the title game. So I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover, Notre Dame to win, and I have no clue on the over-under. I got no comment.
I like it, Russ. I'm going to stay with you there because Notre Dame needs to make that big statement right here and say, yeah, Army's undefeated, but we're still Notre Dame. Yeah, we have that bad loss, but look what we've done ever since. Committee, look at us here. Yeah, Notre Dame is going to win by at least 30 points, I'll say. They own Yankee Stadium every time they go there. I'm going to take the under here. I think it'll be about 33-3, just about, something like that. And then Notre Dame money line, obviously. Joe.
Yeah, talk about if only Notre Dame hadn't lost to Northern Illinois, we wouldn't even be really caring about this game. But yeah, I agree with you all. I think the fact that this is theoretically a top 20 matchup, 6 versus 19, Notre Dame has to win. And as I said before, they have to win convincingly. It can't be a close game. They have to blow them out to look good, to look impressive. And I was reading an article, and I'll be brief, about, Army is not just Navy 2.0, and I agree. Army is a very good team. I can't wait in a couple weeks for that Army-Navy Bowl. I think that'll be a fun game to watch. With that said, though, I think Notre Dame has to win by, over 14 points. So I'm going to take Notre Dame, minus the 14. I'm going to take the over because I think Notre Dame's going to have to put up points. And then obviously Notre Dame money line.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Joe. I'm doing the same thing. They're not Navy 2.0, but they're like maybe Navy 3.0, where they can score a couple more points against us. I think, Justin, I wish we could hold them to 3 points, but we didn't hold Navy to 3 points. They scored 14 points. So I think for that reason, I think it's going to go over. I think we're probably going to win like maybe 47-23 or something. We'll probably beat them by like 2-3 touchdowns, which we need to do. So I'm taking Notre Dame across the board and the over. Just like the Dodgers did, my other team's about to win in Yankee Stadium. No big deal.
BYU at Arizona State. We talked briefly about this game. Arizona State's a 3.5-point favorite at home, 48.5 over under. Sun Devils minus 170, Cougars plus 142. I'm going to call Arizona State is just looking like the hotter team right now. BYU, not so hot. They've got a problem. I got the Sun Devils covering here. I'm taking the over because it's at home and Arizona State money line. Joe.
Yeah, I'm with you, Justin. I think, like I said earlier, I think BYU kind of peaked a little too early. I think they're coming back down to earth, and I think Arizona State, as much as Russ hates to say it, I think is a hot team right now. So I'm going to just ride the hot team. I'm taking Arizona State across the board, and since it's the Big 12, I'm going to take the over.
Pete.
Yeah, you guys kind of read my mind. I think BYU's done, and I like Arizona State. So I'm going to take Arizona State across the board, same exact thing. It's going to hit the over. And, yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Russ.
That's so fast, boys. I think Arizona State's going to wear themselves out a little too much on Friday night. There might probably be a costume party going on. We all know Arizona State, they party school, so they'll be a little tired. So I got BYU covering, got BYU money line and the over. Let's go Cougars. Gotta love Cougs.
Game of the week: Indiana at Ohio State. Ohio State minus 13 at home, 52 over under. OSU minus 485, IU plus 370. Pete, give us the take.
Oh, man, I think Kirk Cignetti's going to get the job done. Ohio State can suck a fat one. They're going down. And, I don't care that it's at home, and neither does Kirk Cignetti. He's got this team amped up, fired up. They're going to go in there. They're going to beat them by, I'm thinking, maybe like a field goal or a touchdown. So I'm taking Indiana to cover the 13. I'm taking the over, and I'm taking Indiana money line, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Book it right here.
I love it. Russ.
Well, I'm going opposite. I'm going Ohio State to cover. I'm going Ohio State with the money line, and I'm going the over.
Okay. Joe.
Yeah, this one's tough. I'm going to take Indiana plus 13.5 now. So obviously right now Vegas is liking Ohio State a little bit, or people are putting money on Ohio State. I think Indiana, they're going to keep it close. So I'm going to definitely give them the 13.5. I'm going to take the under. I think it's going to be more of a defensive slugfest. But ultimately, who's got the better talent? Who has the guys that are going to make the big play when needed? Even though I don't think Ryan Day is that great of a coach, I was thinking earlier today that is he really potentially the Brian Kelly of the Big Ten, because he wins the games he needs to, but then loses to Michigan 3 years in a row, or has that random upset against like Purdue. So I'm not going to call him the Brian Kelly of the Big Ten. That will kill some of my friends in Cincinnati. But anyways, I think ultimately Ohio State get it done. But I think it's going to be a lot closer. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a nail biter till the end. So again, Indiana covered 13.5. I'm taking the under, but I think Ohio State gets it done.
You're saying Vegas loves Indiana. I think Vegas is just baiting everybody and like, hey, everybody here, put your money on Indiana, and then just be like, oh, sorry, we kicked the late field goal to make it 16.
That could be happening.
Tennessee.
It could happen. You never know.
My call on this game is I love Coach Cincinnati. He is definitely coach of the year. Indiana's been so impressive his first year at the helm. Now this is the game they've circled all year. And then on the other side, you've got Ryan Day, who's under immense pressure, so much pressure to win out and win the national championship. Otherwise, they're going to have him canned. So you can't lose games like this. You're at home. Yeah, you've got an opportunity to beat a top 5 team at home, a top 5 team who has played nobody really of note this year, although they did destroy a team you almost lost to in Nebraska. But I like what Joe said here. It's going to come down to the end. I feel like it's going to come down to 4th down. Indiana's down by 2. They're at the 50-yard line, just trying to get into field goal range. It's 4th and 10, and they come up short trying to convert. So Ohio State's going to win a nail-biter, taking Indiana with the points there. I'm going to go with the under. I think it's going to be a bit more of a dogfight than we think, but OSU is going to pull through. I'll take the money line. And we're going to speed through here our next segment of predictions, upset cover, other games we're watching, starting with Pete because I know he's got to run.
Yeah, so I'm taking the upset Indiana over Ohio State just because I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So that's my upset of the week. My cover is going to be Wake Forest covering 24 against Miami. I think Miami might have a little bit of a letdown week.
All right. And my upset's going to be Houston +8 over Baylor, cover being Stanford +14 at Cal. That's a rivalry that could go either way. We've seen Cal look great on offense. We've seen Cal look pitiful on offense. Still the only team in the nation to lose to Florida State. You don't like to see that. Joe?
I didn't really have an upset of the week this week. I have 2 covers for you. I think IU is definitely going to cover the 13.5, and I have Kentucky covering 20.5 over Texas. Again, I think Texas had a big game last week, and I think they may have a little bit of a letdown against Kentucky. So obviously Texas gets it done, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than 20.5.
Russ?
Yeah, I got Minnesota covering 12.5 against Penn State, and I got Pitt over Louisville.
Excellent, guys. All right. Then just taking a quick glance at the Heisman odds here. Travis Hunter now the big leader in the clubhouse, -350 Vegas odds. Ashton Jeanty coming in second, +380. Cam Ward +1,300. Dylan Gabriel +2,500. Everybody else is pretty much a long shot. Jalen Milroe +2,800. Curtis Rourke 3,000. And Jackson Dart 4,000. Is there anything here that shocks you?
You didn't put Shedeur on there? That was the only thing.
Shedeur's pretty far down, believe it or not.
All right.
None of this shocks me. I think that, obviously the top 3 we'll find out over the next couple of weeks. So it's not that shocking to me. I think it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. What really needs to happen for Travis Hunter to walk away with this?
They need to win the Big 12 and then make the playoff, I think. Although I guess that's, regular season or win the Big 12.
Well, get into the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, or that, at least do that and play good.
I think he just continues to do what he's doing. I mean, I think he is just a freak 2-way athlete, and I love his work ethic. I think the fact that he gave up a touchdown this past week and he was pissed off about it. I love that in a guy that's just always hungry to be better.
Hey, don't you love it? You give up a touchdown, you're like, hey, coach, throw it to me. I'll go score a touchdown, make up for it,
Exactly. He is a freak athlete. But again, you can't count out Ashton Jeanty. He's putting up Barry Sanders numbers.
That's true.
Yeah, what can he do to win it? That is the question. Being a Group of 5 team,
I don't know, not much.
I mean,
he
just has to keep doing what he's doing. On
the national stage.
His door is closing. He needs to keep putting up big numbers, and hopefully. In like their conference championship, he just lights it up, and Travis Hunter has a down game or something. I don't know.
I'm gonna go quick. I think Ashton Jeanty will have the same problem the Pac-12 had, and that's the reason the Pac-12 isn't a conference anymore. Is that they play on either a mountain time zone, so most of the games they play are Friday night, Saturday night. So everybody in the Central Time Zone, it's late when they come on. I mean, BYU comes on at 10 p.m. here, so I think they have the same problems. Quick, let's get going.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a great point. Wrapping it up here with our cheers for the week, starting with Joe.
I have a little troll one. Mike Tyson's great ass. And it will be one of the greatest memes to probably be established this year. Whoever was filming that and didn't realize the dude was butt ass naked is hilarious to me. Because honestly, that fight sucked. It was the highlight of the entire night. So thank you, Mike Tyson's ass. You made the night.
Yeah, Mike.
Pete.
So I'm going to give it out to Kurt Herbstreit's new dog, Pete, for taking over for Ben. He's a little legend. Obviously, we're both named Pete, so hopefully he keeps Ben's memory going. And then the other one I'm going to do is to the ring girls in the Mike Tyson fight. That's who really won the night. That's the reason I couldn't stop watching, man. Sydney Thomas. We got two Sydneys out there, Sydney Sweeney and Sydney Thomas. Oh my God, that was the best reason to watch that fight was the girls. So congrats to them.
And you're telling me there's a chance with both of them.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Ring girls' lives matter. Yes, it's true.
That's true. Yep.
And
Russ.
Justin, I don't really got one. Just want to shout out, FTSN for giving us the opportunity to do this. Remember, everybody, tune in tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern on deck. We're back. I had to take a couple weeks off from a little depressed. I was a little angry. I was getting a little angry for a while there, and I had to decompress.
You wouldn't be a true fan if you didn't.
I heard Soto's meeting with the Dodgers tomorrow, so.
Yeah, you can take that 600 and 700 million, go for it. He sucks in the
No, dude. Please re-sign him, please.
No, I don't want him. He ain't coming to New York.
Toronto signed him.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, exactly. Someone else, please.
Hey, how old is he? I better ask Joe Buck.
He's 26.
Thanks, Joe Buck.
Yeah.
Joe Buck's 26. Wow.
No, Soto is.
You don't remember the joke from the 2019 World Series. He would not stop raving that Juan Soto was only 20 years old and then 21.
Oh, that's right.
He was 19, actually.
Yeah, crazy.
All right. And I don't have much, but I want to say thank you to life for all the blessings that it's gotten me the last couple of weeks, and it will continue to give me. If you ever want to go on a safari, by the way, check us out, EXG Safaris. It's my company out here, and go check out Africa. Maybe one day we'll sponsor this podcast, but that'd be a bit of a conflict of interest because I'm the host here. No. But that's going to do it for us here this week at the FTSN with Touchdown in Paradise. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Justin.
I'm Russ.
I'm Joe.
I'm Pete.
And we're signing off. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.